My name is Riley. At the age of 14, and fueled by the desire to earn some of my own money, I took on a couple babysitting gigs. I had some experience taking care of kids as my siblings are much younger than I am. Little did I fathom, though, that during one particular night, had the circumstances been even slightly different, I might not be here today sharing this story. In Princeton, West Virginia, the middle of October unfolded with the autumn season in full swing, showcasing stunning foliage. The homes were equipped with Halloween decorations, creating a spooky but festive ambience. Meanwhile, I was navigating the challenges of my first year in high school. I managed to secure my third babysitting duty. The upcoming one I had scheduled for Friday was found online. I met the family at their residence the day prior, and they seemed really nice. They handed over the cash for the job in advance, and the task seemed pretty easy and straightforward. Plus, I can squeeze in some homework. It was Friday, 6:45, and I had just arrived at the family's house, accompanied by my dad who drove me. We were both struck by the size and elegance of the residence. The home had a very modern aesthetic. Walking to the double-door entrance, I rang the bell. The couple I had met the previous day greeted me kindly. Glancing back, I waved to my dad, signaling him that he could leave. They kindly offered to take charge of my jacket and directed me to the closet where they would store it. They shared that their son, Arthur, was currently resting in his upstairs bedroom and that he would most likely wake up in an hour or so. I was informed that he knows I'm here, and they mentioned that he is quite cooperative with babysitters, suggesting that there shouldn't be any trouble. Right before they departed, they encouraged me to make myself comfortable and mentioned that I was welcome to help myself to anything in the fridge or pantry. I offered my gratitude. Shortly after they left, I took a brief walk around to get to know the place better. The rooms, especially the living room, had an open, spacious design. I made my way into the kitchen and glanced into the refrigerator, finding an array of fresh juices, though I opted for a sealed Vita Coco instead. Popping it open, I settled onto the couch, retrieved my bag, took out my homework, and turned on some soft music. A couple minutes into my studies, I heard some movement upstairs. I listened for a moment, then it stopped. Must be Arthur, I thought. I went over to the base of the stairs and peered up the dark staircase. "Arthur?" I asked. No response. Dismissing it, I returned to my homework. Continuing my studies, I noticed a gentle drizzle starting outside. Glancing at my watch, I observed that about a half an hour had passed. I decided to wait for another 30 minutes or so before bothering Arthur. A moment later, I caught the sound of activity emanating from the basement. I felt alarmed. Setting my pencil aside, I stood up to investigate. As I approached the stairs leading downward, it became clear that the TV was on. Descending slowly and quietly, I asked, "Hello?" The glow of the TV started to reveal the open living room downstairs. On the screen, an old black and white film was playing, resembling a classic zombie movie. In the dimly lit room, I scanned for a light switch. Despite my attempts to flip it, there was no response. I tried a few more times, yielding the same result. It struck me as odd. Walking over to the sofa, I searched for a remote and found it on the coffee table. Picking it up, I turned off the TV. It dawned on me that I was now enveloped in darkness. Sensing a slight unease, I promptly returned upstairs. Returning to the living room where I had left my homework, I discovered that my notebook was no longer there. My heart sank into my chest, and I stood frozen for a moment. Suddenly, I felt something brushing up against my leg. "Oh my God!" I exclaimed as I looked down and saw a cat gazing up at me. I had completely forgotten about the family's cat. I picked it up and embraced it. "Ginger, was it?" I said as I held and petted the cat. Back at the table, I found my notebook and pencil knocked onto the floor. "Was that you?" I asked the cat, assuming that he was responsible for the mess. While the idea of the cat also turning on the TV by accident seemed like quite a coincidence, I didn't completely dismiss the possibility. Following a bit more homework, I felt the need to go check on Arthur. It had been nearly 90 minutes since my arrival, and the time was approaching 8:30. Before reaching the stairs, I heard footsteps above, indicating that Arthur might be awake. "Arthur? Are you up there? It's Riley, your babysitter," I called out, but there was no response, just silence. As I took my initial step up, a flash of lightning pierced the darkness upstairs, followed by a resounding clap of thunder. In that brief moment, I thought I caught the sight of a silhouette of someone, but it was too fast to confirm. "Arthur, are you up there?" I asked once more, keeping my eyes fixed on the upper floor. Abruptly, the power went out entirely, and my frustration grew with the night. Once again, I found myself surrounded in darkness. I pulled out my phone and turned on its flashlight. As I approached Arthur's door in the upstairs hallway, I sent a text to my dad, letting him know about the power outage and my growing nervousness. Opening the door to Arthur's room, I swept my flashlight across the dark and shadowy space, revealing Arthur still lying motionless in bed. The only sounds present were the rain splattering against the windows and the faint rumble of the continuing thunder. "Hey, Arthur, can you wake up?" I asked, placing my hand on what I assumed his shoulder. With no response, I repeated, "Arthur," only to come to the horrifying realization that I was shaking a large, nightmarish-looking doll. In terror, I screamed. I sprinted to the room's door, hastily closing and locking it. I reached for my phone, initially dialing my dad, but changed my mind, opting to call 911 instead. A dispatcher quickly answered, and in tears, I struggled to explain the distressing situation. I was advised to stay in the room, stay quiet, and keep hidden, with the assurance that an officer would be at my house within 5 minutes. Although the dispatcher wanted me to stay on the line, my immediate concern was calling my dad, leading me to end the call. Just as I finished the call, I perceived commotion downstairs, along with footsteps making their way up towards the room. A man's voice called out, "Riley?" It sounded like the father I met. Opting to stay quiet, it became apparent that the person calling my name had sinister motives. The disturbance continued, prompting me to head towards the window. The man began knocking on the door, attempting to open it. While he persisted, I looked out the window, considering the possibility of escape. Despite the dispatcher's advice to stay put, my confidence in my athletic abilities, developed through a lifetime of playing sports, led me to contemplate making a dash for it. I lifted the window and cautiously maneuvered onto the roof shingles. I heard the man again yell, "Riley, it's me, Roger." The power went out and we came back. I remained doubtful. Their assumption that I wouldn't realize the missing car in the driveway and the improbability of their swift return struck me as naive. Undeterred, I proceeded to find a good vantage point to leap from. With the wet and heavy rain, I continued cautiously, mindful of the slippery conditions. Suddenly, I heard a burst as the man forcefully broke down the door in the bedroom. Assessing my options, I identified a suitable spot that wasn't too elevated, allowing me to land on grass. Glancing back, I noticed the same dad I had met for the job glaring at me with anger in his eyes. Choosing to ignore him, I shifted my focus forward, put my phone in my pocket, and took the leap. Fortunately, I landed with just a minor slip on the slick grass. In the midst of the continuing storm, I stood up to ensure I was okay. Despite the cold weather, I remained unaffected, my blood pumping, and adrenaline surging. I began to sprint forward, periodically checking over my shoulder to verify if anyone was in pursuit. It seemed clear, and the man was no longer visible in the window. The sound of approaching police sirens reached my ears as I quickened my pace. The sole focus on my mind was getting as far away from that house as possible. I intercepted the police en route to the home. accompanied by an ambulance closely behind. Without delay, they tended to me, providing immediate treatment and wrapping me in a blanket to dry off. I reached out to my dad to share the details of the recent events. His immediate concern invoked tears, but the joy of his voice upon hearing that I was okay matched my own profound sense of relief. The following day, a couple investigators joined me at my house for a discussion, with my parents present. Their objective was to hear my account of the events and provide updates on their findings. I recounted the night in meticulous detail. To their surprise, one detail stood out. I casually mentioned the cameras and praised the impressive security. However, they informed me that no cameras were found inside the house. Believing that the intruders had prearranged the situation, they reached out to the homeowners. To our surprise, the owners, who hadn't been to the house for over a month and only had someone sporadically caring for the cat, were shocked by the news and voiced that they would offer any kind of support they could. It has been 2 years since that night, and I find myself consistently more vigilant. The fact that the intruders were never apprehended adds to my heightened sense of caution. During the time, I made the decision to close both my phone number and social media accounts. It was challenging considering I was an active user. However, after the incident, I no longer desired that level of exposure. The idea that those individuals might come back into my life is likely to remain a haunting presence for the foreseeable future.